On today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we've got another 7-round mock draft for you right before the 2024 NFL Scouting Combine.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome into Mock Draft Monday. It's brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 back if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. As I mentioned, Gino, the NFL Scouting Combine this week, so free agency is coming up soon, but for 1 week, it's draft time, and I think we should just, before we get into our mock draft today, tell everybody to proceed with caution with the Combine, right? Let's not get too ahead and, rule some prospects dead in the water, but at the same time not say suddenly a third-round pick is a first-rounder because he runs a 4.3, right? I mean, I think the Combine can definitely be overreaction season.
There is a tweet, and I don't know if it's a parody account, but it's an exceptional tweet. It's called @FakeCoreyCanan, so I'm sure it's parody, but it says, "We've entered the point where the reminder rings true again. Teams don't make significant shuffles to their draft boards with the Senior Bowl and Combine performances. Exceptional athletes on tape are going to test exceptionally. It still doesn't change their tape." And folks, for years, teams have known how these guys are going to run. Track data is used all of the time in football. A lot of guys run track in college for their respective teams. When they go to the trainers, their agents are in constant communications with teams as well. It's not going to be a major shift. When you get into the pro day and scouts can go into buildings and talk to more people and you could get to the more behind the scenes stuff, it might change a little bit, but it's not going to be, all of a sudden, Jackson Powers Johnson, somebody who has been lauded as a first-round pick through the entire cycle, he runs bad, and all of a sudden he's a third-round pick.
No. I think it can raise questions that you then go back to the film and have the film answer it for you, or it can confirm things. But if it's making you change how you feel about a prospect so dramatically at the end of February, that's a problem in your evaluation process. And Gino, as you mentioned, teams know that for the most part, but there are some teams that definitely do fall victim to the overhype or underhype of an offseason pro day or the combine. You look at back, and I don't know why this is the one I think of, but in 2014, Teddy Bridgewater takes the gloves off in the pro day and he throws like crap, and his draft stock took a hit. Or John Ross runs the best 40 time of all time, and the Bengals took him in the first round. Teams, some that aren't good, definitely, I think, overreact a little bit.
What about the 9th pick in the National Football League draft last year, Lou?
Sure.
What about Jalen Carter? What about
that's
teams showing up to his pro day and he looks out of shape and he doesn't run and test well, but then you turn on his tape and it's like, this guy's a freaking all-star, man. He's a
in fairness to the Eagles, man, there's another one from Georgia, Jordan Davis. Let's not lie. When Howie Roseman saw a 340-pound man run a 4.8 flat or something, it was
4.64.
Yeah, I'm being a little I'm not even giving him enough credit. Let's be honest. I'm sure that definitely played a part.
Oh, there are definitely people that buy into the hype, but at the same time, is it going to change a first rounder versus a third rounder? Absolutely. It should. Is it going to change you a couple picks where you should be or should not be selected? Absolutely.
It can put a guy on the map, right? Maybe a guy doesn't deserve to be graded as a second-round player. Maybe he is a day one pick, and the combine helps you go back to the film. But to me, Gino, at this point, if you don't know about somebody this late into the process, then, again, that's kind of on you.
Well, that's just bad on the area scout, whoever is responsible for that area, that they can't find all of their prospects. They should probably be fired by their respective team, but that's for another day. But at the same time, Lou, this is just another element of the information gathering process.
One small piece.
And it's a good way to look at it from a 30,000-foot perspective. How did they train before this? How did they prepare? Did they take this job interview seriously? That's what teams are looking for. And what about, who was it was it Kelvin Johnson that showed up without his own cleats and then just put on somebody's cleats that were random and just ran? Things like that are what scouts want to see. What happens when adversity comes and gets in the way, right? Like the Chris Jones situation that they joked about on New Heights, where his pants literally fell down on national television. Like, how do you respond to that as an athlete, right? These are events that you train for 3 months that are ran 1 or 2 times in their entire life. People that do this for a living, i.e. Olympic athletes, train for this for 20 plus years. Teams can kill prospects because of this process, but at the same time, like you said, Lou, it can also ask questions. It can also open up some doors to where you look at different things on tape and say, oh, maybe that's what correlates with how he ran. But at the same time, you're not going to judge, jury, and executioner this guy, put him on the guillotine, and just remove him from your draft board because of what happens in Indianapolis. And if you do, it's because of things that we have no idea about, and it's in those meeting rooms when they're not on the field in their underwear.
Totally agree. Stock will rise, though, and fall, I'm sure, across, media circles and as we continue the draft process. So before all of that happens, let's do one last 7-round Philadelphia Eagles mock draft before the 2024 Scouting Combine, which does begin on Thursday, Gino. We have the first workouts, but of course, Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, they do meet with the media tomorrow. So definitely some stuff to, look forward to before Thursday.
I got to say, for the Combine, that is always my favorite time, is when the GM and the coach get to talk, because it's the first time after the season where they have really taken a step back. When the season ends and it's locker clean out, they're still emotionally ridden. Well, now it's a look towards the future. I'm really excited to see what Howie and Nick have to say, and that's what we're going to talk about on tomorrow's show. But we're talking about Mock Draft Monday. It's been 2 weeks. I think you and I completely forgot it was Monday last week.
Oh, absolutely. We were doing our offseason options series.
Probably did that. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure, but we're back with our Mock Draft Monday series, and we're at pick number 22 for the Philadelphia Eagles. So each week we like to do different scenarios, what the Eagles could consider. What if they went with this position? What if they went offense, heavy defense? What if they traded back, or what if they traded up? We'll start doing trades eventually as well. Sometimes we like to do predictive mock drafts. Sometimes we do what we would do. Today we can explore some different avenues. Gino, you had the first pick last time, so I'm going to take the 22nd overall pick here. And one thing we have not done, but we kind of hinted at it a little bit in our defensive tackle preview for free agency, is what if the Eagles did say Jordan Davis is not going to be the every down player next to Jalen Carter? Like, we need another guy. Maybe Milton Williams, that player, but he's 1 year left in his deal, and he hasn't proven it over a extended stretch yet. What if a guy like Byron Murphy from Texas fell into their lap, and you can get another, not Jalen Carter caliber player, but another stud young defensive tackle prospect that can rush the passer and be an every down player to be a part of that rotation to replace Fletcher Cox? Like, I kind of like that idea, especially if you go safety and free agency, linebacker, like I predict Howie Roseman might do. This is something he probably will consider, considering he does take linemen every single year.
And the one thing I instantly went to when you started talking about this was the proactive element of not just replacing Fletcher Cox.
Right.
Is the writing on the wall there with Milton Williams then that they think they might not be able to afford him in the market? Is it there with Jordan Davis that they don't think he can be an every down player? But getting to the pick, I saw a mock draft this weekend where Byron Murphy went to the Eagles, and my eyes instantly perked up, because you're talking about the explosiveness, the ability to hold at the point of attack in Vic Fangio's defense, where they're going to be limited with the amount of guys that have their hand in the dirt. You got to talk about somebody who can hold up against the run when they are in there, even on passing downs as well, where they have to get to the quarterback. This guy can do a lot of everything. He's not the other defensive tackle out of Texas and T'Vondre Sweat, who literally cannot move laterally. Byron Murphy, he reminds me, I hate comps, but the type of player, not saying it's a one-to-one comp at all, but the type of players like that Jeffrey Simmons, long-armed, strong vice.
Love that, a guy that got away in 2019.
Get off the ball. He can hold the point of attack. It seems like a very Philadelphia Eagles pick, especially if we find out in 2 or 3 weeks from now that Fletcher Cox gets paid outside of Philadelphia, and Milton Williams, there's no signs of an extension coming through.
And maybe
this
you
could
pay
be a
safety.
legitimate pick.
Right, maybe you go big on L'Jarius Sneed in free agency, so you go corner, or you go linebacker in free agency. You can also re-extend Hassan Riddick. the edge group in the free agent class is really deep. So maybe Howie says we'll go with those positions in March and we'll take a defensive tackle, the best player on the board at 22nd overall, which is Byron Murphy, the defensive tackle from Texas. And that's going to be the first pick of Mock Draft Monday. We'll continue to roll things on for Mock Draft Monday coming up next, rounds 2 through 4, right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
As we roll on, today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bets. That is $150, $150 for quite literally putting in an Abraham Lincoln and winning on that bet. You can bet on everything, quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props. That's what we love here, especially in the NBA. You can get lost in the amount of props that FanDuel has. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
All right, Eagles fans, welcome back into Mock Draft Monday. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Want to let you know Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. It's Mock Draft Monday, so we're going through another 7-round Philadelphia Eagles mock draft right before the NFL Scouting Combine kicks off. Everybody's down in Indy right now. Practices start on, workouts on Thursday, but Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni do meet with the media tomorrow. We took Byron Murphy, Byron Murphy? Did I get that right? Yeah, Byron Murphy, the Texas defensive tackle.
I know it'll stump you because there was another one out of.
That's what I thought. I was like, and I'm tripping up. Yep. Defensive tackle out of Texas, a guy to pair with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Milton Williams next year would be scary young talent on the interior. So, Gino, that was the 22nd overall pick. You have the responsibility of selecting for the Eagles at 50 in round 2.
On the graphic we have, would they go offense heavy in this situation? We clearly did not go offense with our first pick. Would they do it with their second pick? I don't think they would do that. It depends if there is a legitimate wide receiver that they think can be a catalyst for their offense. Would they go running back in round 2 again, Lou? I don't believe that they are going to.
If you're not going to pay a guy a second contract, to me, I do not want a second round player. Like if you know you're not going to pay a certain position a second deal, then that would be off my board as early as round 2.
And that's the thing. They're not going to pay that position, but could they pay potentially another wide receiver? I believe they could. And there's one that I fell in love with at the Senior Bowl. I think you saw him. Roman Wilson has been flying up boards. Think about the capabilities of having such a gadget element, but can also create one-on-one in the blink of an eye. And he's going to be subject to playing in those areas between the tackle and probably the numbers. He's not going to be a wide out type of wide receiver.
I agree.
But in this day 2 territory, you're talking about the Ladd McConkey types, the guys that aren't the polished #1 X receivers that you're going to get on day 1. Like, they're not in that conversation for a reason, but they're really, really good. And the Eagles have to find a player that they can add in this style of offense. Because like you said, Lou, if they're not going to pay a running back, they're probably going to go and get a couple guys that aren't the best in free agency that they can get by with. But you're going to have to continue to find ways to add elements for Jalen Hurts in this offense to get by. Dude, Roman Wilson being the 4th option with Dallas Goedert and the other 2 guys on the outside, taking the eyes away from everybody. Oh, my good. The yak capabilities of this guy with just in the areas of space that Kellen Moore would get him in, your eyes should light up with what could be with Roman Wilson out of Michigan.
outside of Ladd McConkey, I don't know if there was a player more unguardable in Mobile than Roman Wilson. I just think his skill set is the perfect complement.
And he just won a national championship. Like,
right.
That's the type of player Howie Roseman loves.
Exactly. And he's a smaller player, like you said. He's not a starting X or maybe even a Z at the next level, but he has deep threat ability, run after the catch ability. He's a good route runner, has amazing hands. There was a back shoulder one-handed grab he made down there that I was just jaw drop. It was great. And I think he would be, this is kind of a luxury pick, but when you have 2 second rounders and you say we can get 4 years out of having Brown, Smith, and Wilson together as a trio, especially considering the injury history of Dallas Goedert. Brown's been banged up the last few years. Devontae Smith got hurt at the end of the year. I really like that selection. I think you can afford to do that if you go defense heavy in free agency, and with that 22nd overall pick, we go defensive tackle with Byron Murphy. I really like that selection. I don't think they would do it again, right? I think you could use another tight end, like Theo Johnson's a player I really like. Ben Sennett from Kansas State as well. Looking at running backs like Trey Benson and Jonathan Brooks would be great. But again, if you're not going to pay a player, not even willing to, a second contract, that would be off my board. So I say we move on from offense, probably even tackle. I don't love the options. Let's see what we've got. Gino, for me, my favorite linebacker of this class is still on the board, and I would be running to the podium if he's there at 53, Edgerrin Cooper. When it comes to the range and the violence he plays with, the way he can spy the quarterback, and like the length, the upside in coverage, I think this would be a really good pick. And of linebacker, corner, and safety, if Howie's going to go cheap at one in free agency, I think it's going to be linebacker.
And with Edgerrin Cooper, you're going to kind of just lump him in as an edge because he's going to do everything for you. He's going to be able to go out and just drop into coverage for you when need be. He's also an animal getting after the quarterback. I love the idea because now you have, I would say, 3 different edge rushers, and add Nolan Smith in there is 4 different pitches between all of them. None of them are really the same. And for Fangio, he's going to have all sorts of ability to be creative because in the first 3 picks, you just gave him 2 more guys that he can use as chess pieces along that line. And the thing with the 50th and that 53rd pick, you could have swapped the Roman Wilson and Edgerrin Cooper pick any day. I just wanted to change it up and go with that offensive weapon because I think it is a real possibility that Howie goes down there again. Yeah. Look at what they did with Miles. Look at what they did with JJ. Hate it or like it, they did it. They went down that avenue. Howie Roseman, I could see him doing it again, but if he sees a player that could fit into this defense like a glove, plays with the physical nature that they are looking for and that they need, and has the ability to cover, something that none of their edge rushers do outside of Nolan Smith, who did it at times, they're truly going to need that to let Fangio play the defense that he wants to. Like you said, Lou, if he's there at 53, you are sprinting to the podium.
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, if you want a guy that's going to have a high athletic score and you can work with the traits, Edgerrin Cooper's this week especially, it's going to be really impressive. So we went defensive tackle, wide receiver, and linebacker, no secondary. I think, again, this is based off the presumption that it's a free agent heavy class for them at those spots. But, Gino, I mean, you got the pick here at 97. We could look at safety or corner if you want. Maybe running back here. What are you thinking?
Let's take a look at corner and safety. I would like to see who we have on the board there.
Kalen King, the 2 Penn State kids at the top.
Smoked with that Kalen King pick a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, let's not do it again.
Way
let's
too
not get
high.
ratioed.
I think Kyrie Jackson is somebody that falls subject to the Oregon, we discovered this guy way too late, and you're going to see him test exceptionally well, and teams have him as a day 2 guy. I think that is a pick that makes so much sense. I don't want to do it because we have done that in the past. Let's go with safety, though, Lou. Are there guys that you could pick in this class that, let's say it's not the best? It definitely isn't. If Tyler Nubin isn't there, I don't know if I'm going to pick any of those guys that early.
Think so either.
Outside of that, I'm going to stick with the position that the Eagles need. I'm going to go to running back, Lou, and I'm going to stick with the offense. We are going to take...
This will be a tough choice. If Blake Corum, Jalen Wright, and Marshawn Lloyd are all on the board, that's a tough call.
Well, I'm going to throw you a change-up pitch, Lou.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Dylan Lauba, the running back out of New Hampshire. Simply because he can do everything for this team. I know Blake Corum is really good, but he has a lot of tread on those tires, man. He has been subject to injury at the same time. We made the Tennessee pick. We made that home run pick a couple weeks ago. We want to continue to get new guys in the airwaves for you guys. So that's why I'm going with that pick, man. Dylan Laube showed out down in Mobile. He is somebody that you want to find your next Darren Sproles. There was a great article I read, Lou, that when the Eagles acquired Sproles, he was 30 years old, and they're hoping for, 3 or 4 good years out of him. They ended up getting 6. To get a pristine Dylan Laube, he's going to run, I don't even know. I mean, he's going to do a great, 3-cone is going to be probably low 7s. I
heard Austin Eckler comparisons when I was down there.
That's what I'm
thinking. Saying he's Austin Eckler.
Dude, he's so low to the ground. And I remember one scout, they were telling me they were down at Austin Eckler's pro day when he ran, and they're like, that is the easiest evaluation you'll ever do. And I think that's the same with Laube. And talk about pass catching element out of the backfield, man. Add it to the list of guys that can help Jalen Hurts. That's what I want. I want Jalen Hurts' life to be as easy as possible. The defense, you're doing your part, Lou. I like it so far.
I was going to say, I like that you're definitely making it easier on Jalen Hurts. Roman Wilson and Dylan Laube on the backfield. That's going to do it for day 2. We'll wrap things up for day 3 right here on Mock Draft Monday. Coming up next, right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what that is, what matters to you, so you can do more of it. If you're thinking of starting online therapy or therapy in general, got to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule, whether you work an 8 to 5, the night shift. They can work around your Monday through Friday. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And I've done this a few times, you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge if it's not the right fit. BetterHelp will keep helping you find the right fit for free. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOn to get 10% off your first month of online therapy. All right, Eagles fans, we continue to roll on. Mock Draft Monday right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Rounds 1 through 4 are complete, and a pretty healthy balance, Gino, of some luxury picks, but not even luxury. I think needed role players for the offense for Jalen Hurts. We took Roman Wilson, the wide receiver from Michigan, at 50 in round 2. You also took Dylan Laube, the running back from New Hampshire, at 97 in round 3. Really like that pick, a do-it-all running back in the backfield. I went defense. I was going meat and potatoes. Byron Murphy, the defensive tackle from Texas, at 22. Edgerrin Cooper, the Texas A&M linebacker, at 53. But overall, like, if this was your first 4 picks, like, that's a lot of talent you're bringing into both sides of the ball.
And I love that you went with guys on the defensive side of the ball that bring that physicality element, element that the Eagles were truly missing down the stretch, right? It just seemed like they were getting bullied off of that spot. Why were they so bad against the run, Lou? Because they were just getting dented. The defensive line was getting dented. Well, how do you counteract that? You get somebody in Edgerrin Cooper who loves crashing downhill when he does have to defend the run, and also is somebody who can take away guys in the pass game. And heck, dude, add Murphy to that rotation. You're going to keep the rest of the guys fresh as well. And then you're going to go 4 deep with those guys who are so young. Milton Williams is old as one, and what? He's 25 years old right now?
Yeah.
I mean, you are going to have guys that have explosiveness in their lower half. That's what the Eagles were missing.
I agree. So we're back on the clock here, round 5 at pick 160, and we have not taken anybody in the secondary yet. And again, this is off the presumption that they go heavy in free agency, as I mentioned a few times. But, Gino, like, let's say they bring in a safety like Cam Curl, or they bring in Xavier McKinney, right? They sign a pretty solid tier 1 player in free agency, or, Geno Stone from Baltimore, or they bring in a L'Jarius Sneed. But back to safety more so than corner, they're going to need more depth, because if you cut Kevin Byard for, $14 million. Maybe you restructure, but I think they'll probably end up just cutting him. If you do that, Sidney Brown's not going to be ready to start the season with a torn ACL. So you've got Reed Blankenship, and then you've got that free agent. but you're going to need more depth. Like they are pretty bare bones right now at that position. So I'm looking at safety right now at 160, and I think my favorite would be the Demon Deacon at Wake Forest, Malik Mustafa.
It was a little too early to go safety, but where you really can find some value is in this day.
I was going to say, where you were picking in round 3, the prospects were, it drops off after round 2.
You got maybe like the big 4 or 5 that you can argue taking in that day 2 territory, and then you just get into a bunch of guys who are role players, and I think Mustafa could really be that guy that offers the rangy element, the physicality element, the ability that he's definitely going to be raw in coverage, but they seem to be okay with that. Look at Sidney Brown in that selection last year. If you're athletic and you're physical, they're willing to work with that on that back end. I think that's a very good pick. I think it's a smart pick, and I think it's a pick that if you look at special teams aspect as well and the ability to keep a guy as that 52nd, 53rd player, Mustafa falls right into that category for year 1 because he's not going to be a contributor right away at pick 160. No. These are guys that if they don't trade these picks away, they're going to be special teams guys. They're going to be that 6th wide receiver, the 5th safety, the 7th linebacker, depending on
Howie does a good job, though, Gino, a lot of times at finding starters on day 3. And
here's one for you, Lou. I would like Michael Clay to have a little bit of input on how he likes his athletes.
Look how far you've grown the last
I think it's a very good a very good conversation to have with your special teams coordinator, being like, what is like the smallest we can have that you can work with?
You know what's funny? 2 years ago, there wasn't a player or a coach on this team you hated more than Mike Clay. And now you're like, give him input in the front office.
I think there's a lot. Not in the front office, just like on like.
No, I know.
Just like you need athletes, and who would know it better than your special teams coordinator?
No, that's for sure. Like a lot of those young kids last year were great on special teams. Josh Jobe, Keely Ringo, the list goes on. Gino, you're on the clock here. Pick 170 in round 5.
One thing you will always do, the Eagles will always do, and especially since they drafted Clayton Thorson, and then they missed out on my guy and Carson Strong. I think they go down the well, continue to try and grab a quarterback. The thing about the quarterbacks is you might have them ranked much lower than where they go. But Tanner McKee, did anybody think he was going to be potentially a guy that right away was going to go as high as he did? In my opinion, I don't think so. You're going quite down the list of guys that were.
Yeah, I was just checking it out. So once I should have stopped when I saw Emory Jones.
Yeah, no. Let's take a step back on that element. But Joe Milton, I absolutely hate the idea of. I think the Joe Milton idea stinks. I think we've seen what he could be. Jason Bean is one guy that I think has a higher upside. Somebody that split reps last year at Kansas. Somebody that we tried to get at our game down at CGS, but he was a little bit too big. He ended up going down to a bigger bowl game there at Shrine, and he's had success there. Kansas, they had a very good offense last year. Bring in somebody that, like you said, Luke, can push Tanner McKee. The Eagles are going to draft quarterbacks, and if you have a pick back-to-back, what takes precedent over everything else, Lou? I'm sure a quarterback will be on their board a little bit higher than the rest of the positions.
No, I totally agree with that. I like the pick. Jason Bean, the quarterback from Kansas at 170, and Marcus Mariota is a free agent. Are you just betting on Tanner McKee being the unquestioned backup? Probably not. You'll probably bring in a veteran, but as you mentioned, you could bring in 2 day 3 picks in back-to-back years with upside and hope one pans out. I don't hate that idea at all. So we're back on the clock here at 171. And again, Gino, in the draft, I assume they're not going to keep all these picks because day 3, especially now where a lot of guys tend to stay in college, it doesn't look great. So you'll probably trade some of these, but if they have these selections, I think there's no way they go the entire draft without drafting an offensive lineman. So here, I mean, it's probably between, I think it's tackle over an interior lineman. So between Ladarius Henderson and Christian Jones, I trust your judgment here more on linemen, so I'm going to give you between the two. Who would you take?
We haven't selected Christian Jones yet, have we?
No, I don't think we took Henderson last time, so let's go Christian Jones.
Christian Jones, when I was watching him in those one-on-ones, he really fits what I see in terms of what Stoutland likes from a body makeup profile. Yeah. Like if you saw how he was setting, he likes to have his tackles set with their hip initially back, and they have to be able to extend their right or left leg, depending on which side you're standing, like really far back. If you see Jordan Mailata, it's like he's like stepping like 4 or 5 yards back. Christian Jones is a big body. He's very, very raw. But you talk about that type of profile that can match what Stoutland likes and what he has done in the past and develop those type of players. yeah, that's a home run type of selection. And you get at back-to-back picks, a potential offensive lineman who could be a swing guy for you for a couple of years and potentially a backup quarterback that could challenge Tanner McKee. Those are selections that if you are making those picks in round 5, and that's what we have to say, if. And we heard that quote from Jim Nagy that the NIL really poached a lot of the day 3 territory guys. Teams might be wanting to stockpile picks down the road, but here you make those picks at positions of value and worth. And offensive line and quarterback, Lou, I mean, what more could you ask for?
And the Eagles have a lot of these picks, 160, 170, 171, and we're on the clock again at 178, and then one more pick at round 6. So, Gino, this one's yours.
Let's finally go and get ourselves a cornerback, Lou.
All right,
let's go to defense. Let's go get ourselves a cornerback and go down the list.
I think Brownlee from Louisville is the best one on the board here.
See, all of the the rankings are still
they're weird with each.
It is
Storm the best name in the draft's available. Storm Duck.
Okay, we're gonna completely change what I was thinking here because the late round rankings are completely out of whack in my opinion. Let's go back to offense, and I want to get a tight end for our guy.
All right, let's do it. Gino's treating Jalen Hurts today, everybody.
We went with, did I go with Brevin Spanford in mind? That's what I believe. Isaac Rex out of BYU, another player that we also tried to get down at CGS. Was he down at the Senior Bowl, Lou, or was he a Shrine Bowl guy?
I don't believe so. He was Shrine.
But he is a typical BYU type of tight end. He's a little bit undersized, but you do have to be able to play in line. He did that a lot. He's also a pass-catching element. I wouldn't say that Grant Calcaterra has a for sure roster spot next year. I wouldn't say that Jack Stoll has a for sure roster spot next year. They're going to add tight ends. They brought in Brady Russell, who got poached by Seattle off of their practice squad last year. Who knows how long Dallas Goedert is going to be here? They just have to try and continue to find ways that if Dallas Goedert is out, they can add a guy in there. So let's see what Isaac Rex can get you out of BYU.
I like it. I think you got to add some sort of upside with a pass-catching tight end. And Albert O's back, but that's not going to do it for me. So I like the pick. Our final selection here, 189 in round 6. Gino, I'm going to go with Andrew Phillips, the corner from Kentucky. Made a lot of plays at the Senior Bowl. Daniel Jeremiah actually just talked him up a lot, saying he wouldn't be surprised if he's an instant, nickel production, or I should say playmaker, from the start. With the Eagles, they have Avonte Maddox. They have Rodgers coming in this year, who they traded for last year, missed the year with the, betting incident being suspended. But Maddox gets hurt all the time. Rodgers has a lot of upside. He was the number 6 graded overall corner from PFF 2 years ago from a coverage grade perspective. But again, he hasn't played in a year. Look how many guys you had to play in the slot last year. It was like musical chairs. To me, give me some more depth in the slot. So I'll go with Andrew Phillips.
They're going to have to be willing to say that if Avonte Maddox isn't the option, we have other guys. They weren't able to really do that last year, so I'm with you, Lou. And I think that's a really good pick. I missed that Jeremiah article. That's a really good one. One thing on Jason Bean, he was supposed to be down at the Shrine Bowl. I forgot he had an illness, but quarterback, offensive line, you talk about these picks that we made at these positions. Howie Roseman, day 3, just go down through the list the last couple of years. That's what he likes to do, man. I mean, think of the Prince Tega Winoga picks going back in time, or the Halapuli Vadi Vaitais and the Clayton Thorsons of the world. And we'll see what Howie Roseman does on that day 3. But early day 1 and day 2, Lou, don't be shocked if Howie Roseman tries to add one more pick there in the top 150 this year. It would seem very up his wheelhouse. And we'll see after the combine, man. Exciting week for us here at Locked On Eagles.
Maybe that's the way you dump some of all these 5th-round selections you have, is you try to move a bunch of them and get up back into the top 150. We'll see what happens. Let us know what you thought of the mock draft. Hit us up on Twitter at LockedOnBirds, at GC24_football, and at DiBiase LOE. Once again, thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We'll see you tomorrow. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go, Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.